very much. Now CNBC's Brian Shackman joins us. He's got the latest on today's market action. Brian, it was sure better than yesterday.
It absolutely was, Larry. And, of course, we already talked about it. So much focus on D.C. with that CEO flogging and the stimulus package. The market, choppy but positive, up all across the board, but all less than 1%. I want to start with something we actually haven't seen in months. An IPO, and a successful one at that. Mead Johnson Nutrition. It's a company any parent would know, maker of all things baby formula related. Priced at 24, closed at 26.62. Pretty good. Let's check on the financials. Battered yesterday, Wells Fargo, a nice 7% pop. Interestingly enough, on below average volume. Bank of America made up about 9%, but let's point out Morgan Stanley up 10%, and CEO John Mack, as we talked about, probably one of the most apologetic of the CEOs on Capitol Hill today. There were a few negatives to point out. Research in Motion shed almost 15% on the fact that earnings and margins might come in on the low end of expectations. Things pretty ugly also at SiriusXM. Rumors swirling about bankruptcy, and EchoStar's Charles Ergen swirling possibly to take it over. None of it made up for yesterday, really, but we didn't breach those lows, as you mentioned, Larry, and that could be pretty significant.
I think that's the best part of the story, to tell you the truth. It's kind of a dull day, but at least it was dull slightly higher than lower. Thank you, Brian. Let's bring in our stock market all-stars. We got Bob Froelich of DWS Investments and author of A Bull for All Seasons. We have Deborah Breedy, president of DK Breedy Investment Management. We have Peter Schiff of Europe Pacific Capital. He's the author of Little Book of Bull Moves in Bear Markets. Hello, everybody. Peter Schiff, you had a fun day today. The biggest winner was gold, up $30 to $944. Goldfields up 12%, Harmony up 12%, Buenaventura up 10%, Newmont Mining up 8%. I assume you're sticking with your gold play.
Sure, you're describing half my portfolio. I mean, I own all those stocks. And, you know, priced in gold, the Dow actually hit a new low today. The Dow Jones is now only worth 8.5 ounces of gold. And I think if you want to know what's really going on with the value of U.S. stocks, you've got to price them in gold. And the market continues to lose value. It's an illusion that stocks are going up. It's because of all the inflation that the central banks are creating.
Now, that's prospective inflation, because right now inflation's falling.
No. Inflation is the increase in the money supply. The price increases are the result of inflation, and they're coming.
Well, the money supply is growing like a son of a gun. No question about that. You and I may differ, Alyssa, because I think right now they're fighting illiquidity, and that's a good thing.
No, I think they're doing the wrong thing. You know, I think what the government is trying to do is recreate the very conditions that led to this collapse. Look at Geithner's speech. Look at his plan. He wants to get Wall Street re-securitizing credit card debt, mortgage debt, auto loans, student loans. He wants them selling them up to leverage hedge funds, selling them to foreign institutions, to foreign central banks. They want to reflate the bubble. It's not going to work, but it's going to be very bullish for gold.
Deborah Breedy, I want to ask you about Peter's gold call. I also want to ask you about Geithner's crash yesterday. He was up there mumbling some more on the Hill today, and he was just as vague and ambiguous and not in control of his policies today. And I want to ask you about the stimulus package. So we got all these federal things going on, Deborah. How are you playing it? Are you as gold-oriented, defensive as Peter Schiff?
No, I'm not. I'm not defensive with gold. I think to have a portion of gold with your portfolio, I prefer actually buying Treasury inflation protection bonds over gold. But I think when you're looking at the situation right now, we've got an administration, a government that's willing to spend and do whatever it takes to get the economy stimulated here. I think I look at it like a kid that's graduated from college that doesn't have a job but has a rich father that said, look, I'm going to get you what it takes to get you what you need to get going here.
And remember, TIPS, though, TIPS is like hiring the fox to guard your hen house. You're not going to get any inflation protection from the government. They're creating the inflation. All you're doing is getting a security tied to the CPI, but the CPI dramatically understates inflation. You get much better inflation protection by owning gold.
But at least you're getting some type of an interest payment. With gold, you're not getting that. And gold is not the end-all to everything. Look at gold, what happened in 80. Look at
what's happened to the price of gold in the last 9 years. The Dow has gone from being worth 43 ounces of gold to worth 8.5 ounces of gold. I think by the time Obama leaves office, the Dow could be worth just 1 ounce of gold.
And what if gold isn't worth there? What about the 1980s when it looked even worse than today? And the
you're talking about
slob
the peak.
that bought it in 1980 was sitting there 22 years later saying, "Oh my God, I made nothing in gold."
But
so you have to really
gold
look at
in
gold
1980 was like buying the Nasdaq in 2000. If you would have bought gold in 1970, it was $35 an ounce. And if you bought gold in 1970 versus the Dow in 1970, you're better off with gold.
Let me bring in Dr. Bob Froelich for 1 second. The other story is, of course, the CEOs on the Hill, Bob Froelich, and, of course, whether that mattered today. Banks had a good day, okay? We'll go through the numbers here. Banks up, the bank index up 6%, right? Citi up 10%, B of A up 9%, Wells Fargo, JP